Welcome back. In this lecture, we will discuss the theory of aplanatic lens and its application, that is oil immersive objective. In the last lecture, we were discussing about the aberrations in the lens, in which we have discussed two aberrations. One is chromatic aberration, another one is spherical aberration. To remove the spherical aberration, we have discussed four different methods. One among them is use of aplanatic lens. In that lecture, I told you we will discuss about the aplanatic lens in the next lecture. That is what we are going to discuss in this lecture. Aplanatic lens. First, what it actually means. Aplanatic lens is a spherical lens which is free from spherical aberration and coma, okay, which is free from the defects that is classified as spherical aberration or coma, okay, right? A spherical lens, it is a spherical lens which is free from the defects of spherical aberration and coma. We have defined what is spherical aberration, but what is coma? Coma is another kind of aberration, chromatic aberration. It is said to be chromatic aberration. This is nothing but, suppose if you are having a double convex lens and this is principal axis. If the light ray is coming from non-parallel axis, that is, it comes like this. If the light ray comes like this, it should focus to some point, right? It should focus to some point like here. It should focus like this. Instead, if something happens like this, in this point, instead of focusing as an image, if there exists a blurred image at this point, then it is said to be coma. So this is said to be coma, right? This kind of aberrations like chromatic aberrations and spherical aberrations can be removed, right? That is, this aplanatic lens is a lens, it's a spherical lens which is free from this kind of errors. Fine. Actually, in this aplanatic lens, there are two conjugate points. It's a spherical lens, I said earlier. It has two conjugate points, which are called aplanatic points, right? In aplanatic lens, there exist two conjugate points. Two conjugate points, they are denoted as aplanatic points. Actually, these are the points which is free from these errors. How to define that? See, aplanatic points are two pair of points. It is a pair of points. It is 2 points. These 2 points form a pair, right? We can define these 2 points in the axis. If it is a spherical lens, then we can define 2 points. These 2 points you can define as aplanatic points. It's a pair, right? In such a way that if the object is placed at one point, then the image will be appeared at another point without any defects like spherical aberration or chromatic aberrations. Right? Let me tell you again. Aplantic points can be defined with respect to the axis of a spherical lens. These 2 points are pair of points where if you place the object at one point, the image will be appeared in the another point without any defects like spherical aberration or chromatic aberration. Fine. Now we are going to mathematically define what are those 2 points that we can call it as aplantic points. For that, let us consider a spherical lens. Let us consider a spherical lens whose center of curvature is C. Let's draw a axis whose center of curvature is C. Whose center of curvature of this spherical surface is C, and whose radius of the curvature we can define. This point to this point we can define it is R. Radius of the curvature is R, and this within this spherical lens the refractive index is N. Refractive index is equal to N. Now consider a point O where the object is placed. Consider the point O where the object is placed. This O is located at distance. This O is located at distance which is R divided by N. Which is R divided by N from C. Right? This O is placed at distance from C. That distance is R by N. Now, the light ray from this point O will touches the spherical surface at P. Right? It touches the spherical surface at P and it is making an angle theta 1. It is making an angle theta 1 with the axis. With the axis. Right? And after refraction at the surface it bends away and take the direction and it travels towards B. It moves like this. Now let's draw a normal to this so that we can draw a normal line. Now, right, this angle is incident angle and this angle is angle of refraction. This angle is angle of refraction. And let us define this point at the spherical surface is P. Okay. Now, if we extend this refracted ray to the backwards, if we extend this ray to the backwards, assume that this is a straight line and it touches the axis at I. And it touches the axis at I, and let's make this angle as theta 2. Okay, we have extend this line backward. Fine. Now I is angle of incidence, R is angle of refraction. Okay, so be clear with this setup. Now be clear with this setup. Okay, fine. If this is R, this is also R. Okay, if this is R, this is also R, and if you want this angle, and this angle will be R minus I. Okay, this entire angle will be R, right? This entire angle will be R. As this is R, this entire angle will be R, but what we want this. This is the R minus this angle I. Okay. Now, from Snell's law, we can write, according to Snell's law, you can write n1 sin theta 1 which is equal to n2 sin theta 2. Right? n1 is this Snell's law applicable to the situation where, right, light ray traveling from medium 1 to medium 2, right? This is angle of incidence and this is angle of refraction. Now medium 1 has so this is I. If you write, this is R. If the medium 1 has the refractive index n1 and medium 2 has the refractive index n2, according to this situation, you can write the Snell's law n1 sin I which is equal to n2 sin R for this situation. Okay. Now apply Snell's law here. Here the spherical surface and the inside is made up of glass. Outside is, this side it is air. For air, refractive index is equal to 1. For glass, let us take refractive index is equal to n. Okay. So if you apply Snell's law for the light ray which is traveling from O to P and P to B, then we can write n sin I which is equal to, this side outside it is air, so 1 sin R, and if you write, that is Snell's law. So it is simply n sin I which is equal to sin R. This is equation 1. And now let us consider the triangle OPC. Let us consider this triangle O, P and C. So consider the triangle O, P and C. In this O, P and C there are two angles, theta 1 and I. Let's write sin theta 1. What is the formula for sin theta in trigonometry? Opposite side by hypotenuse. So for sin theta 1, so this is the angle. So let me redraw this part alone in order to understand better. So this is O, this is C and this is P. This angle is I, this angle is theta 1, right? Now we need to write sin theta 1, and this is opposite side and this is adjacent side, this is hypotenuse. So here opposite side by hypotenuse, so it becomes PC by OP. Similarly we can write sin I, so this is sin I, okay? In this case, if you write sin I, then what is opposite side? For sin I, if you look from this side, this is opposite side, right? For sin I, now this becomes opposite side, this becomes adjacent side for sin I, and this is hypotenuse, okay? So for sin I, it is OC by OP, OC by OP. Now if you write sin theta 1 by sin I which is equal to PC by OP divided by OC by OP, that you can write OP by OC, this will cancel out, so that it becomes PC by OC, okay, which is equal to PC. PC is nothing but radius of the curvature R. So here this is R by what is OC? OC or CO is nothing but R by N. So R divided by R by N, which is equal to R into N by R. This will cancel out, so that sin theta 1 by sin I becomes N, or you can write, you bring the sin I to the right side, you can write N times sin I, which is equal to sin theta 1. This is equation number 2. When you compare equation number 1 and 2, N sin I is equal to sin R here, N sin I equal to sin theta 1 here. So as left hand side is equal, so right hand side must also be equal, so that comparing equations 1 and 2, we obtain that sin R, which is equal to sin theta 1, or for small angles R is equal to theta 1. This is equation number 3. Okay. So R is equal to theta 1. So this R and this theta 1 are one and same. This R and this theta 1 is equal to one and same. That is what we obtained here. Okay. And next point, let us consider another angle OPI. OPI. Okay. Let us consider another angle OPI. Okay. Let's draw that diagram for the clarity. Okay. This is O and this is P and this is I. This is angle theta 2. Here it is R minus I. Let this angle is alpha. Earlier it was not defined. Okay. This angle was not defined. For the purpose of taking mathematics, let's take that angle. And now this entire angle will be 180, and this angle is theta 1, and we have let this angle is alpha. Okay. So with that, let's see now. If you want theta 1, you can write, let's write this for alpha. If you write the equation for alpha, if you want this alpha, you have to subtract this theta 1 from 180. So alpha equal to 180 minus theta 1. This is one case. Okay, let's write this as equation number 4. And then again you can write the alpha, this alpha in terms of these three triangles. Sum of these all three triangles are equal to 180, right? So alpha plus theta 2 plus R minus I, which is equal to 180. Now if you want alpha, what you have to do? 180 minus this terms. 180 minus theta 2 plus R minus I. Okay. So let's write this as equation 5. Now let's compare equation 4 and 5. Left side is alpha. So right side will also be alpha. Left side is alpha. Both are equal. So right side will also must be equal. So that if you equate the right side, 180 minus theta 1, which is equal to 180 minus theta 2 plus r minus I. We can cancel out 180 minus minus. What is remaining? Theta 1 equal to theta 2 plus r minus I. This is equation number 6. Okay. Okay, let theta 1 equal to theta 2 plus r minus I. But already we have set theta 1 is equal to r. Theta 1 is equal to r. So that you substitute r in the place of theta 1, becomes theta 2 plus r minus I. So it becomes, you can bring this to left side, r minus r plus I, which is equal to theta 2. R will cancel out each other. So we are having I is equal to theta 2. And this is equation number 7. I equal to theta 2 or theta 2 equal to I. Fine. So in this we have removed this angle theta 1, angle theta 2. We have removed this angle, and in this place now we have angle of incidence and angle of refraction. Whatever the angle of incidence and whatever the refraction, that is equal to theta 1 and theta 2, right? So there is no etc. angles in these equations. Now let us consider the similar triangles. Let us consider these triangles. C O I. This is theta 1, no sorry, theta 2, theta 1 P. Here there are two triangles in this. This is two triangles in this. There are two triangles. Triangle 1 OCP and triangle 2 PCI. This triangle OCP, this is one triangle. PCI, this is another triangle. These are the two triangles. These two triangles are said to be similar triangles. Said to be similar triangles. What is a similar triangle? If two triangles are said to be similar, where the faces should be proportional, and any two angles of one triangle must be congruent with another triangle. Congruent means equal. Generally congruent triangles are the triangles where their faces and angles are equal. They are all three faces and all three angles are equal. Those are said to be congruent triangle. But here similar triangles where only two angles are congruent, two angles are equal. So the sufficient condition for saying two triangles are similar triangles, where any two angles of one triangle must be equal to any two angles of other triangle. Here how we can say that these triangles OCP and PCI are similar? Because here we have I. This theta 2 is also I. Theta 2 is equal to I. Fine, right? Then one angle is equal, right? Other angle, for these two triangles, this angle is common. So I equal one angle from this triangle is equal to one angle from the second triangle, and this angle is common for both the triangles, so that you can say that this is similar triangle. So for this similar triangle, you can write CI by CP, which is equal to this CP by OC. So this CP by this OC. This you can write CI, that is CP square by OC. CI is this distance, right? That is what we are going to obtain. And what is CP? CP is nothing but this one, which is radius of curvature. You can obtain this. So that it is R square, and OC, it is nothing but R by N. So that this is R by N, which is equal to R square multiplied by N by R. R square will cancel out and with R. Now we have Ci equal to N times R. This is equation number 8. Right? So now we have removed theta 1, theta 2 that we have equated with the angle of incidence and angle of refraction. And from equation number 8 and from this, we infer that if an object placed at the distance R by N from the center of curvature of the spherical lens, for that object, the image is produced at the distance of N times R. Okay. Now, these points O and points I are said to be conjugate points or aplanatic points, right? So that for the object placed at O, it looks like the image diverged from the, it appears that it is diverged from this object. O will appear to be diverged from I. Okay. So these are all about aplanatic lens. Now such kind of lens has a very important application in the microscopes of high resolving power, that is the microscopes whose magnitude is greater than 500, where this aplanatic lens is used to have the image which is free from spherical aberration and chromatic aberration. In the next segment of this lecture, we will see how this aplanatic lens is used in the microscope. Application of aplanatic lens in microscopes. So oil immersion objective in high power microscope. What is objective? Objective is a lens which is present near to the object, and another lens is placed near to the eyepiece in a microscope. Okay, so this term oil immersive objective, right? Objective is a lens, and there is a term oil immersion objective. In this domain only, aplanatic lens plays a vital role. Why? Because high power microscopes, high resolving power microscopes has the magnitude greater than 500, right? The overall magnitude of the microscopes are greater than 500, in which the magnitude in the order of 50 should be obtained through the objective lens. Okay, right? Hence, this objective should have the following qualities or should satisfy the following conditions. What are that? The image produced from the objective lens should be free from the defects like spherical aberration and chromatic aberration. Or other aberrations are unimportant because the field of view of the microscope is very small. We are going to see very small object, and that we are magnifying it to view in a larger size. So other aberrations are not so much important, so that this objective should be free from spherical aberration and chromatic aberration. Another one is the sufficient light should enter into the object in order to clearly view that object. Okay. Another thing, we are placing the objective lens very close proximity to the object, so that a sufficient light is very much important. Okay. Now, here in the first condition we said this objective lens should produce an image which is free from spherical aberration and chromatic aberrations, right? To achieve that, we use aplanatic lens, the concept of aplanatic points and aplanatic lens in the objective. Okay, now what we are going to do is, the thing is, in the aplanatic, in the earlier discussion, in the aplanatic lens, the object is placed inside the spherical surface, right? It is placed inside the spherical surface. But in a practical case, how one can place the object into the lens, object into the objective lens? It is not possible, right? In that case, we use the composition of oil and an aplanatic lens, right? This objective lens, that is the combination of oil and an hemispherical aplanatic lens. That is why this term oil immersion objective comes into picture. Well, we will see how this works. See, let's draw a diagram first. Let us consider a hemispherical lens, right? And this lens is placed, on an, right, on an oil, right? This is made up of oil, right? This portion is oil, right? The setup is made in such a way that a hemispherical, this is hemispherical aplanatic lens. Hemispherical, it's a hemispherical aplanatic lens. See, as we are not able to place the object into the lens, what we do is we place the object. We place the object O within a oil system, right? It is an oil. This oil is an oil, and this, the name of this oil is cedar root oil. The name of the oil is cedar root oil. Now the refractive index of cedar root oil, refractive index of the cedar root oil is equal to the refractive index of this lens system. Now if we place the object within this oil, and if we place the flat surface, plane surface that is touched this oil surface, now the entire system behaves like a lens system. Okay, entire system behaves like a lens system. Now the light ray coming from this object will not get refracted until it touches the surface, because this and this has the same refractive index. Okay, fine. Now let us consider this lens system as L1. Now the lower part, the plane part, is close to the object, right? Let's this as center of curvature of this lens system C. Now let us make the adjustment in such a way that this object and the C, which are placed in a distance, the distance between C and O. So distance between C and O is in such a way, it is said that it is R by N, where N is the refractive index, R is the radius of curvature. This is R, right? If that is the case, right? Now a light coming from this object O will not getting refracted until it touches the surface of the lens, right? In this case, right? Now this situation, the object placed within the oil, it is treated that it is placed within the lens system. It is placed within the lens system. Now you see, as this object is placed a distance R by N, so that for an refracted ray, now for an refracted ray, right? For this refracted ray, the light appears to be come from the point I1, right? That is, for object O, this point I1 will serve like a virtual image. It serves like a virtual image, and this virtual image will appear at the distance in R. Okay? So that for O, for this lens system, the O and I are the two aplanatic points, right? Hence, all rays starting from O after refraction appears to be coming from I1. Okay, this is first case. And second case, in the microscope there is another lens. Another lens will be placed. This lens is called meniscus lens. It is called meniscus lens, whose lower surface is A, upper surface is B, and let's extend this straight line. Okay. Now this light ray, the refracted light ray, will once get another refraction. Okay, the refracted light ray will once get another refraction at the lower part of the surface, at A. This is lens system L2, right? For all ray coming from the surface of the aplanatic lens that touches the lower part of the meniscus, that is at the surface A1, right? It appears to be comes from the point I2, right? Already we said that when a ray coming from point O, after refraction it looks like it coming from point I1, so that we said O and I1 are aplanatic points. Now for all rays that is entering into the lower surface of the meniscus lens, it after refraction it looks like it is appearing from the point I2. Okay, so that I2 for I1, this we can obtain, that is, for all rays after refraction, for all rays from I1, looks like comes from the point I2. This we can obtain only when the center of the curvature of the first surface A is set as I1. Right? If the center of the curvature of this surface is I1, then the image will be appear to be coming like I2. Now assume that this I2 is also the aplantic point for the surface B. Right? Assume that it is for upper part also, second lens also, so that this I1 and I2 are the aplanatic points for the second lens as well, right? And there are other two lenses placed. There are other two lenses placed above this, so in such a way that similar another one lens over here, as I don't have this kind of lens. In that way, and the final image, right? Similarly, another side you can get the similar thing, right? Another side you can get the similar thing, so that you can get an focused image at the eyepiece, which is magnified in the order of 500, right? In that way, using the lens 3 and lens 4, the final image system will be formed. Fine. So let me recollect again about the oil immersion objectives. So oil immersion objective is nothing but a composition of a hemispherical aplanatic lens and cedar wood oil. The thing is, in our earlier derivation, we placed the object into the aplanatic lens system, but practically it is not possible. In order to satisfy that condition, we consider an oil whose refractive index is equal to the refractive index of the hemispherical aplanatic lens, and the object is placed inside that oil, and it is adjusted in such a way that the distance between the center of curvature of the hemispherical lens and the object is r by n, so that as the refractive index are same, the light coming from O will get refracted only at the surface of the hemispherical aplanatic lens, and at the surface it looks like all the lights after refraction it looks like it comes from I1. Now this I1 will be located at a distance nr from the center of the curvature. This distance is nr. Now we have another meniscus lens whose lower surface is A, upper surface is B, and it is adjusted in such a way that this I1 is the center of curvature for this lower surface. In that case, the light ray coming out from the surface will enter into the lower surface. After refraction, it looks like that it comes from I2, right? Which means for the lower surface, I1 and I2 are aplanatic points for the lens system L2, and assume that for the upper surface also these I1 I2 are aplanatic points. Now with another help of another two lenses, this object that is to be magnified will be getting magnified at the eyepiece. So this two lens system is called oil immersive objective. Objective is a lens which is placed very near to the object that is to be magnified through a microscope. So this is the application of aplanatic lens. So with this, let me stop this lecture, and we will resume back in the next lecture, where we will discuss about the rainbows, primary rainbows and secondary rainbows. Until then, be safe. Thank you.